Welcome to the 2024 Kickstart Invitational podcast, where we dive into the heart of the Kickstart Invitational. I'm, of course, your host, Kyle Steffi, alongside Justin and Carter McPhail. In each episode, we'll be bringing you exclusive insights, especially this episode, player profiles, behind-the-scenes interviews, and expert analysis of the latest developments of the Kickstart Invitational. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great, Kyle.
Doing well, Cal.
We've got a really fun episode today, and I'm really excited to jump into it. But before we do, we've got a special word from our sponsor. Carter, take us away.
Got to pay the bills.
Thanks, Cal. Like always, this episode is brought to you by Dunham Sports, your ultimate outdoor and sporting destination. Whether you're into hunting, fishing, or loving every day, Dunham's has everything you need. Right now, use code Kickstart24 for an exclusive 20% off on all golf gear and accessories. Exclusions may apply. Don't miss out on the fun. Visit Dunham's in-store online at dunhamsports.com. Dunham Sports, where the great outdoors meets unbeatable savings.
Thank you, Carter, and thank you, Dunham's, for the sponsorship into this program.
And the honor.
As you guys can see, we got a special guest on, of course, again. This one's a little extra special. 2024 captain, newly engaged, ready to try and take down the conductors. First team to ever do it. We got Chase Beerbower. Chase, welcome to the program.
Thank you guys.
Chase, I mean, if you've been watching the show, you know, we asked this to all of our guests. What does the Kickstart mean to you?
Yeah, I think I heard a couple other people say it, but it's like one of those things doesn't seem like a big deal, but then you find yourself thinking about it like every day. And it's like kind of quickly become one of those like big events in the year, kind of one of those things that marks off like those timeline throughout the year. So it's something I really look forward to and can't wait.
Yeah, I think that is becoming a trend that guys noticing how much they think about it. It's like one of those things that is, year over year you can plan out, okay, around this time I've got this to plan for, and it's like, going home for the holidays, like this is around the time that I'm going to be, going and doing that. While in the end of May or beginning of June, this is when I'm going to be going on the Kickstart, right? You can start to, it becomes a checkpoint throughout the year, right? What, do you have a little more specific memory that is your favorite? What's your one favorite memory, a little more specifically, that you look back on it from one of the previous Kickstarts that you like to think of?
Probably either one of last year coming up Diamond Springs after kind of a shit show of a second round, just in terms of logistics.
Yeah.
Not our fault.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's like my favorite course in the world to play. Just to have everyone coming up in like kind of that golden hour light. It was like one of the cooler golf memories I have. So that, or coming up 18 last year, kind of with the tournament and the balance and just having everyone kind of sitting there. I mean, we had talked about that, Justin, like the first year, having 18 be that finishing hole. It didn't happen the first year. I think we played them flipped. Correct?
Yeah, we started
we
on
played the
10 in
back
year one, so we didn't really get that. And before you keep 100%, number 9, not supposed to be a finishing hole there.
No.
Like, of all the holes at Pilgrims, it's like probably like the number 17 most memorable
For sure.
hole out there. It's nothing like, number 8 green ended up being here, and we kind of had to get back near the clubhouse. So like, I guess we'll go right here.
Yeah, exactly. So just having it work out where that's kind of where it ended was, really great. Sitting there talking to Kyle on the tee, trying to figure out what we needed to do and kind of where everything was. So that was pretty sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we talked about this a couple episodes, though. I know you and I, Chase, have talked about it, but it's not. It's one of those things where it didn't have to end up like that. Like, there's plenty of, the first year the competition wasn't quite as close. It ended up being close because the PC3 team played well on singles day and made it close in that way. But it definitely was one of those things where, if the draft goes a little bit differently or one guy, plays way outside of his handicap, it doesn't come down to the 18th hole. So for basically half of those matches to come down 18 with everything on the line, literally like each individual match, and if they go any certain way, like if it ends up being 2-1 for the Net Eagles in those last 3 matches that played out 18 instead of being 1-1-1, then the Net Eagles end up winning the cup. And that's, when you get a bunch of guys together that are not, not that close as far as skill level goes, like we have a big spread, we've said it plenty of times, anything can happen. And so for it to come down to that very last hole, we're so lucky. And it obviously it is a perfect setting for it. And Pilgrim's Run, I think a lot of everybody's favorite course. You mentioned that Diamond Springs is like your favorite course to play in the world. Can we get confirmation that it is also happens to be your favorite on the trip, or is this a Tron Carter situation? It's my favorite in the world, but it might not be my favorite on the trip.
I'd say it's my favorite course to play in the world. Like if you just had to drop me somewhere for a month and I had to play every day, I don't think there's anywhere else I'd choose. There's courses that I find more impressive maybe, or that stand out a little bit more. Most of which I got to play through you. But just in terms of if you had to drop me off at one, and even over the last 2 years, kind of switched most of my golf played in Grand Rapids from being played at the Meadows to there. So it's just always one that I would play that 10 times in a row on the trip if we had to. It never gets old.
Right. If
James,
all
I'm curious
things
as
came
to
down to it, I think you wouldn't get a lot of pushback from everyone that says
No,
we need
it's
to play. Let's play Diamond Springs the whole time, and then we'll mix in Pilgrims for singles. You wouldn't get too many people to interject and be like, "That's a bad idea."
For sure.
Jason, I'm curious what makes it the number one for you.
I like
It's
Justin
fun.
Carter. Yeah,
it is
Justin
fun.
Carter, we didn't.
It's
grow
just
up at a
fun.
country club. We grew up playing the munis and the kind of local courses, and it's just one of the best versions of that. I walk it sometimes for $17. It's insanely cheap. You can get out. It's never too packed. There's always a good amount of people there. It's not just dead. The course it's just nice enough. It's not any nicer than it needs to be. Because it could look like Diamond Springs, but then it'd probably pay $120 a round or something. So to me, I'll take this every day, and it's just it's like Carter said, it's fun. There's everything that's hard about it. You can also, it makes it sick. I think Carter was talking about a couple weeks ago, the second green. I think I've seen 3 of the coolest shots I've ever seen hit on the second green there. Carter, he was talking about me and him both getting stuff in him there. The first year I was playing with Colin, and he hits up along the back wall of the bunker. So he just grabs a 4-iron and takes a freaking 3/4 swing, drops it down to the bunker, and just half pipes it up to
this was
probably the most insane shot I've ever seen.
I don't want to cut off your momentum because I think you're getting to the heart of Diamond Springs as a whole, but the shot that he's describing, Cullen was up there. He went back to the cart twice to get different clubs. He was up there with his highest lofted wedge, and he's like, I don't think that I can get under this with this. So he goes and gets a 9-iron, and he's like, can I chip it around the side of this bunker and get it to stop, or if I punch it through, is there any way I can get it to stop? And he couldn't, and he went back again and got the 4-iron from a downslope like this, right? He's on the back side of the bunker that's over the green, if you guys can picture it in your head, and decides the 4-iron is the best play to bump it straight down this hill and use the firm sand bunker as a half pipe. Pops it down, it pops up, trickles down the hill, and goes to 5 feet right below the hole and he makes the putt. It was absolutely disgusting. Like, and then like what you're in Chase is kind of saying, we grew up playing like munis and local, kind of courses that are in the similar price range as Diamond Springs. But the thing about those is they all have those pretty standard, like circular pushed up greens. And what separates Diamond Springs is they sacrifice probably a tiny bit of the conditioning around like the tees and the fairways and stuff. Like we know that the singular cut visually stands out, but the grass is also kind of somewhere between fairway and rough, right? It's not totally, shaved down like Chase was also saying. If it had the conditions of Pilgrim's Run, it would have the price point of Pilgrim's Run as well, right? So they sacrifice a tiny bit of that conditioning from tee to like approach area for this elevated, like these elevated green like surrounds and stuff with the big slopes and slopes in internally among the green. And you get the opportunity to play those super super cool shots that I think end up as being memories for when you get to go and play there as much as Chase has gotten to play there. Those are the type of things that you remember. You're not going to remember hitting into the same circular green that we played growing up and played through high school golf and stuff like that. So
yeah, like one of
I think
the
you're right on.
You have a pretty photographic memory for about any round of golf we've ever played.
Yeah.
Call it up. I'll remember a lot, but usually I'll remember like the impressive hole, like one of the signature holes or more interesting holes. And it feels like Diamond Springs is one of the rare courses, like at any price point, where it probably has 16 unique memorable holes. And to get that for that like price and that kind of setting is pretty unique.
Chase, let me ask you, when you think about the Kickstart, like, so like even like around this time, thinking about, the draft and year 3 and what it's going to be like, what is your like opinion of kind of like I guess like the overall like vibe of the event itself? Like, do you see it more as like a competitive like golf tournament, like a Ryder Cup, kind of like
it's funny you asked
you're
that
going to win it, or do you think of it more of like a buddy's trip with a side, like a little side action going on?
Before you go, like
Yeah.
Chase and I, the two of us have gone on a number of trips where it's like just us two and like it's not super competitive because how many times can we just play a match like me and him for a Gatorade or like lunch beers or whatever. So this is a different, he and I have been on a number of trips, right? Like this is different than that totally. So carry on with what you're gonna say, because like we've been to a bunch of places and this isn't
I was
like
saying
that
it's funny you asked that, because after when Kyle asked like what is your thought on the Kickstart, I stand by that answer, but like as Justin was talking after, I was like, one of the things I should have said is like it's the perfect amount of like being about golf. Like I think that's what I'm most impressed with, is it's like it's not just like 12 dudes like drinking and then being on the golf course for a couple hours during the day, but it's also not just like two teams that split up and like it's all about the golf and guys are hotheads and competitive. It's like a great mix of like when people are out there, they're working their ass off, and I think we're all 12 pretty competitive people that grew up competing and playing sports and stuff like that. So to have an outlet that is taken this seriously by everyone is, I think, one of the unique things. But at the same time, like you get done on 18 at the end of the day, and then everyone's just like ready for beer, founders, or whatever we're doing that night, and it's like one big group again. So it's really unique in like a competitive setting to have something like that. So
I agree.
That being said, I do really, really want to beat Carter.
Kyle, go ahead.
After competing against Carter for 25 years now.
I think about this often because, I mean, as Chase once was as of late, he was on the clock for a ring, and I'm pretty close to that clock starting to really tick loudly. So like the bachelor party is inevitable to think about, and I think about, like, obviously I've made great friends on this trip, and I'm excited to get to know everybody a bit more, but I'm also thinking to myself, like, would love to do a Kickstart styled event for my bachelor party with all my home buddies. But on the same token, like, I could get all of my good friends together, and the drinking and the night out in Grand Rapids would probably still be the main event, even if we were to set it up exactly the same. And I think that is the beauty of this trip, is that it's the perfect, like, golf is the highlight, golf is the main stage, but everyone gets along so well, and we have such a good time that, like, we're not upset when golf is over, and we're not upset if and when we have a bad round. It is, like Chase said, it is the perfect amount of golf.
Yeah, and what I was gonna say, I agree with you, Kyle. 'Cause, like, the golf and the trip for the Kickstart is what brings us all there. Because, like, I mean, like, for you especially, like, you don't know, or like didn't know Preston, Cody, like those kind of like Cullen's friends. If you think about it in terms of like me, Justin, and Cullen, like starting the trip, like, so it's not like we're getting together to celebrate your bachelor party. So like everyone's going crazy for that. It's like, oh, I'm going on this golf trip, and like I'm not really playing in a pair with a guy that I've known forever. So like I kind of need to like do my part here, which I really I really like. And the way that I kind of have viewed it is like the first year I thought was really, really casual. Like in terms of the golf, like we probably could have told you the teams pretty much like before we even had the draft. Like it was pretty obvious I was gonna pick Brendan and Cullen was gonna pick Preston, and then I was gonna pick Justin, and then Cullen was gonna pick Cody, and then like I'm gonna pick Chase or Michael. Um, and then the second year it felt like just kind of like the way that me and Preston were going about it as captains in the group chat, it felt like it was like almost like too far like towards the competition a little bit, like leading up to it. I was kind of like feeling like this thing, like we have to win.
Well,
Like
it's
thinking
like
about it a little too much.
like the shit talking sort of like ramped up a tiny bit to the point where um you wanted to have success because you don't
Yeah,
want that to keep going, but it never went so far that you would like get upset with anyone, like there was
right.
nothing. And I think that's a bit of credit to you, Carter, and to Cullen, for like the people that have been invited, like are conscious enough to be able to walk that line and be competitive, like Chase was saying, on the golf course, and want to win, and then also be, caring
Guys you want
enough
to have a
and
beer
like
with.
friendly enough to, as soon as that final, as soon as you finish out on 18, you know head back towards the car and like ask the other guys how their round went, and like want to root for guys and like joke around and have fun, and just let all that stuff go, and then get ready for the next day by having some fun back at the Airbnb. And it's a credit to all the guys on the trip for that as well, because I think everyone, um, we're lucky that everyone treats it in that same way, right? You can invite, one of your, like Carter said, all of these guys are competitive people, right? In everything that they do, they want to win, but they're also the type of people that it's not going to bother them too badly if they lose. They'll be happy for the other guys, and it's just as much about what happens between rounds as it is on the golf course. And that we're lucky in that fashion as well. So I'm feeling quite thankful for everybody that is on this trip and treats it that way, because it did sway in quite competitive fashion. And then now that everyone knows each other a little bit, we're lucky that we don't have that same situation we had in the first year where it's like I kind of got to pick this guy because like he's my buddy and he doesn't really know everybody else as closely. Now it's like everyone knows each other kind of enough to just be like, well, we can try to just pick who's the most, who's going to help us win on the golf course. And then when we get back to the Airbnb, the Net Eagles and the conductors are going to, all divvy up and, hang out with each other and watch some playoff basketball and watch some playoff hockey and hang out and, see how many of Dan's free beers we can drink.
So I guess it's honestly a good segue, because we're going to be talking a lot about Chase's team later and the newfound organization that is coming forward. But if I'm not mistaken, Chase, you've been drafted twice by the Conductors and have won 2 rings with the Conductors, right? Or is just one?
No, Carter passed me over the first year, so
Okay, I
we
like
got
to hear that.
storyline going as well.
Unfortunate.
The Mr. Irrelevant year 1.
The
Ooh,
scouting report had come back. Chase had just recently got new irons.
The scouting report was dead fucking on too. So.
And
it was unbelievable.
It was 0-4, and it was unfortunate for him. Fortunate for Michael Bomarito. However, then in year 2, being slotted as the preseason comeback player of the year, we took him with our 3rd pick, but in like the 8th round because we gave up all those picks to get the MVP. But
the scouts, I don't know which scouts were in charge of that, but for them to identify that in the first year, for Carter not to pick somebody of his own blood in the final round, and for that risk to sort of pay off, and then turn around and the scouts then identified that he was a player to watch for the bounce back year, the comeback player of the year award, and to turn around and go 3-0-1 was like
could have easily been 4-0, by the way.
Like Bill Belichick couldn't have identified this guy in the draft as a target. Like,
and we alluded to it. We flat out said it in an earlier episode. So here's your deep cut for those that have been rocking with us since Epi 1. We asked Chase after being 0-4 to be the captain first last year, and he declined. Said I wasn't ready. So
spectacular maturity.
Who wants to be on that team?
Quick,
It's
Chase.
true. It's hard to motivate your guys.
In a few words, like what kind of went into that? Because we never really asked for a reason before.
I mean, honestly, like I think part of being a captain or a leader on whatever team you're on is you got to like show up. And I did not show up the first year, so why start an organization where you're rewarding that behavior, so to say? So I think there are other more qualified people at that time.
All right.
That could have been true. I think I've said it but it showed a level of maturity to recognize that. And then, yeah, that definitely what you sort of like mentioned jokingly was like, who wants to be on that team? It's like, well, you sort of took a risk on yourself and paid that off, because now going into this year, you're a guy that has clearly, quote unquote, figured it out. Went 3-0-1 last year, was a big part of why the team won the previous year. And so now you get your chance to get out in front and lead a team where you're the guy who's done it before, right? And depending on how that draft goes, you could get a number of guys who have also been part of winning teams, or you could get there's a handful of guys out there that haven't won one of these yet, and you could be part of the reason why they get there first, or you could be part of the reason why these other guys continue to have success. So I think it's a very exciting opportunity, a big risk that you took passing on the opportunity and then paying that off by being so successful in year 2.
So I think this is a good segue into the next piece here, because as we've alluded to and maybe just flat out said, Chase is going to be running his own franchise here. And Carter has to look at him, and the conductors have to look at him as now behind enemy lines, and he's on the other side. But for one last time of this season, Carter, I want you to look at Chase as a former conductor, as a champion with the organization, and I kind of want you to run through the intangible profile that is Chase Beerbower.
Yeah, Chase, he's got the knowledge of the Grand Rapids golf game. Like we keep going back to it, and it's not a secret. It's not surprising anyone, but he's, like he said, moved a lot of his Grand Rapids golf to Diamond Springs from the Meadows. He knows the bounces. He knows where to hit it. Like, I was talking to my brother about their rounds last year, and there was a time where he was like, I was a little scatterbrained about, getting our tee times moved up at Diamond Springs, and now we got all the 2.0 GPA kids teeing off behind us, and like, where do we need to go and what do we need to do? And Chase was just riding in his cart like, oh yeah, by the way, here on 11, like, you got to hit it on this side of the fairway, and just kind of like leading them along the way.
Yeah,
So kind of
like
that way.
almost shepherd style. And if I can just pitch in a couple of statistics here, when you talk about his bounce back year last year, he's positive in strokes gained in 3 of the 4 rounds, right? So he was playing above the average, which was extremely comforting to me, like you're talking about, where when stuff broke down kind of between rounds 1 and 2 at Diamond Springs, he didn't have the best round score wise, but at the very time that I needed him, when we were getting pulled off the course after 6 holes and then told to sort of wait at 10T until we were able to carry on again, he went, I want to say he went, par on 5 and 6 to count for our team. And then as we turned over to 10, we had a little conversation about strategy on the tee, about how we wanted to approach the next shot. And I decided to hit driver, and he said, oh, I'm going to lay back a little bit with 3-wood. And, we sort of talked about, well, if we're going to lay up, what we're going to do is we're going to lay all the way up and take the trouble out of play. And he was able to do so and then make par on that hole. And then I want to say he made par for birdie on 11 on the centerline tree hole, and kind of got us through a rough stretch when my mind wasn't on golf at the time, right? When I was starting to worry about, as the person who's the facilitator, like, this extra round that everyone has paid me for like 2 months in advance is going to get cut to 6 holes, and we're going to have to sit around here and wait for a JV golf tournament. And I'm not, we're not going to be able to get through, everything that I so diligently tried to plan, right? It was out of my control. It was out of everybody's control, but it was like it was like this huge weight, like disaster could have struck, right? And he was right there when I needed him to play his best. And once we kind of got through all that and we were back in a flow of playing, and it kind of realized, like, okay, we're gonna get this in for sure. We're not gonna make dinner, but we're gonna get this in. And then, I was able to start playing well again. And then I don't know that we talked about it, but I got a phone call from a scammer that I thought was Chase Bank. Like, popped up on my phone, said Chase Bank. The lady told me that there's that somebody's trying to make wire transfers on my account in amounts up to like $80,000. And she's like telling me all these things like, hey, I need you to confirm this account number. I need you to confirm this amount. And like, all of this stuff's going on 15, that drivable par 4. Like, everybody else in my group is playing, and I'm sitting at the top of the hill talking on the phone to this lady that ended up being a scammer that I thought was legitimately like affiliated with Chase Bank.
Everybody was playing because you were 12 feet below the pin from 325.
It was a decent shot. But Chase comes back to the cart and then he's like, well, I worked at a bank before. Like, what's she saying? And is like, all of that stuff, like that stuff sounds very legit, but that is not the way that these things work. And so what I think you should do is not give her any more information and just request to speak to a bank manager. And when she couldn't provide me like somebody to talk to who is a bank manager who would typically be in the building, he's like, yeah, just let that go. And if you really feel uncomfortable about it, we'll go to a branch and talk to somebody. And like calmed me right down and was, able to, diffuse the situation again when things were getting out of control. So I've rambled on now enough that I probably got Carter out of what he was going to, talk about, but those are the intangible things that I think makes Chase a leader on both on the golf course with his clubs and without his clubs. So that it's one of the reasons why when we went back to Carter Cullen and I deciding who should be the next captain, but Chase was my first pick for somebody to go out there and lead a team.
Yeah, right. I think in year 2, after we didn't get Chase and going with Preston, it kind of seemed like the captaincy matchup was going to be a little bit like fire on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And now with the turn, it could be a little bit of like fire on, just keep pounding the rock and stay the course and just kind of see like if the high flying, I guess, like persona that the conductors have, which I don't necessarily agree with, but can kind of match up with Chase's kind of calming, like centering leadership and partner style. So I'm excited. I mean, it's one of the reasons I voted for Chase too. I think the I guess kind of like the script of not picking him, then bringing him on, winning, and now he's kind of going away to try to dethrone me is exciting, and I'm excited to go up against him for sure. So, Kyle, how about you bring us into our favorite sponsor and our newly found favorite segment?
Yeah, as much as I would love to, this is Jay's sponsorship. He's the one that made the calls on it. So Jay, bring us into our 2024 preview segment.
Yeah, this is another segment. It's the same sponsor as last episode, right? We talked about why we changed sponsorships. But this is the 2024 preview segment sponsored by Alliance Beverage. Again, we can't confirm or deny whether they know that they're a sponsor of this trip or this podcast. We don't know how much they know that they're contributing, which is quite a lot. Dan, maybe don't show this to your boss until you know how much he knows. They're a local beer distributor here in Traverse City. Dan works for them, and Alliance exists to help fulfill and enhance the quality of lives of their associates, their customers, suppliers, and the community. I think they're doing so well. Alliance is here to support the Kickstart Invitational Draft, the event, and the pursuit of great golf and great friends. So Carter, can you help me reveal Chase's team name and logo for 2024? The new franchise is going to be called the Golden Harps.
It's an exceptional name, exceptional logo. Chase, can you go into it a little bit for us? Where'd it come from? What's it mean to you? What do you want the overall kind of persona of the Golden Harps to be in 2024?
Tell us a little bit about the name and the ethos. Where does this come from? What are you guys going to stand for?
For sure. As Justin may know, I will occasionally find myself in a bar or two throughout the course of a week.
Ooh, so, pints.
Yeah, one of the best pint there is in the world is Guinness. So Amen. Inspired by my recent trip to Dublin, where I drank just about 5 gallons of the stuff. we decided to go forward with our new Golden Hearts logo in honor of Guinness. So
I think it's absolutely spectacular logo. Chase is essentially put it together himself, and then we sort of cleaned it up a tiny bit.
cleaned up
Maybe
a whole bunch.
potentially avoided some cease and desists, some potential litigation issues with some
We do throw the
image
brand names
stealing.
around.
You know,
all
this
willy-nilly.
yeah, it's very it's inspired by but not exact copy of a Guinness logo, right? And you know, he put this together, and I think it looks spectacular. It's gonna go really well on some posters. You know, it's gonna go really well on all of our marketing materials, if you will, to all 13 of the people that we market to.
So Chase, I mean, let's dive into your team here. This is the first time we're kind of seeing the new logo, the new team name. The franchise is piece by piece getting put together. You know, what are you, and obviously without giving up too much away to Carter here, but you know, what are you looking to build your team around? What is the draft kind of looking like for you? Have you thought about the draft much? And how much does like personality kind of go up against statistical history here?
Yeah, I've been thinking about the draft a lot. We have some draft boards out there percolating. So
Very
some of you may
nice.
know, some of you may know my dog is named after Steve Yzerman. So he's always been, from his playing days, someone I looked up to, and now as a GM, he's always been someone I looked up to. So we're gonna take from his approach, not give away too much, play everything kind of close to the vest, and be cerebral about it. So I think we have, you know, we're the underdog by far coming in against the two-time champions. This tournament's also unique where you don't really get anything for struggling. You kind of
No free gifts.
yeah,
Kickstart.
Sort of get banished to the back of the line if you know that for sure. The whole event is it's almost like one of the captains is on the board of trustees. It's sort
Yeah.
of built like a sort of
Like
built
Kyle's
as an
fantasy league,
advantage.
where he wins every year.
potential collusion there, but we'll leave that aside.
It's make it take it out
Open an
here.
investigation.
So I think there's
I'll
some
investigate.
structural advantages
Mm.
for the team that wins the previous year, and that happens to be
Hell,
Carter
should have won
this
the
year.
first year.
True. We knew the rules going into this. So I think with that in mind, you kind of got to play from behind a little bit already out of the gate and be smart with the decisions you make. Because you don't always get to make the decision you want. You kind of just have to make the best decision that's in front of you, especially drafting second. So
Yeah, you don't have to hit any home runs, but you absolutely cannot strike out.
yeah,
You know, it just put you so far behind the 8 ball already, drafting second in each round, and then if you have a strikeout moment, then there's almost no coming back from it.
and the good thing is, kind of like you were talking about earlier, like we've been really lucky where everyone's played pretty tight to their handicap, and I think that's one of the things that's made the tournament so much fun.
Absolutely.
You know, aside from maybe me the first year, everyone's been, and even the first year, like every match was fairly close. It wasn't like 7 and 8 or anything like that. So everything
Yeah,
was pretty
we've
tight.
talked to every one of you know, you went 0-4, but every one of your matches went at least to the 15th hole. So it wasn't, you know, they weren't uncompetitive. They just none of them fell your way. So
Yeah. So I think everyone's kind of falling along those lines where you know roughly what you're going to get out of them, and no one's been like a huge kind of disappointment from where they were taken. So it's more just looking in kind of what pieces you can put together that'll, you know, give you a shot.
Mhm.
Instead of just, I don't think you're necessarily gonna miss on someone, but you could kind of put the wrong couple guys together where you're not giving everyone the best chance. So
yeah.
Yeah, and
Would you?
I've just real quick touching on what he just said is you're not really going to miss on anyone. As I've been going through the mock draft and building my big board and rating the players and stuff, I've realized we got 13 guys in this trip. 10 of them are eligible for draft this year. I want all 10 of those guys on my team bad. Like, I'm thinking about like who I'm gonna pick, like first and second and third, and I'm like, there's 8 options that I think would be good picks here. Like, you want everyone on your team. I'd be interested in taking, you know, our 13 guys against any of the 13 guys we could find around the country and go toe to toe in this kind of style event, and I'd take us every time.
We can take that conversation offline. There's a lot of people probably out there that think they've got the best, 12-man golf trip or 16-man golf trip, and I would put not just our operational side, but I would put our 12 or 13 golfers up against anybody else's. Like,
They
that
don't got a
would be-
Fetty slice. They do
Yeah.
not have a Fetty slice, and I know that for
They
sure.
do. I bet that they do.
Not the Fetty slice.
They don't have the Fetty slice. Look, Austin Esser and Cody Smith are not walking through that door on the other side, right? We've already got them signed.
Yeah. You're not going to beat 2 guys by 9 strokes net and lose with 5 holes to play. These guys are shooting 90 and 95 and shooting net 59 as a pair.
They're
Like-
statistical anomalies. Dude,
It's
before
unfair.
we move on too far, Chase touched on it a little bit that he views that the who you pair who with, it can be is extremely important. How much does that weigh into where you may consider drafting someone, is finding the right partner for them? Have you given consideration to that already, or is there more consideration given to, who's the best guy available?
I would say the first option of those two, where kind of along the lines of what Carter said, like you can have a guy play the round of his life, but if he's paired with someone that's also going to be on the same like highs and lows as him, more often than not, you could end up in a situation like you said where you're playing out of your mind and just not seeing results from it. So I think it's a mix. I mean, there's certain guys that are going to more likely to outperform their averages than others. And those guys are always probably going to be towards the top of the board, but you also want to make sure that you're not kind of taking opportunities away from those people or vice versa by pairing them with the wrong person.
For sure.
Not the
For
wrong
sure.
person, just making it harder than it needs to be. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a better probably way of saying it.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a vague enough answer too that you haven't given anything away for sure.
It's an odd time for me to lose connection.
You have to
Interesting.
back in.
Chase, I know you were when we were in the war room, not for the draft, but just in the last season with the conductors.
I was on your team.
All
Carter.
4 of us were there.
We all four were there.
I thought he was saying we, as in you and him, chopping in the war room
We were in the conductors organization at the time.
We've had a lot of conductors on the show.
Stop interrupting. Carry on, please, Kyle.
I remember Chase being equally as involved as Carter and Justin in those I guess strategic alignments of pairings, and I have to imagine he had an opinion. You had an opinion, Chase, on the trade that went down as well, and obviously you benefited from said trade. Is there a world where you're open to doing a trade this year, or is that a hard no? Where do you align with the trade talk, and how does that strategically align with the organization?
It's never a hard no. I would say it's an unlikely yes, for sure. But and kind of along the lines of what you're talking about, I don't know that I'm looking to be quite as aggressive as other captains have been. Just in terms of Carter's already kind of dealing from a spot of advantage there. So you got to really look at what you're getting and make sure you're abstracting, the maximum value. And, for Preston, I'd still think it was a great trade. I mean, he got to kind of control the major chunk of the middle upper end of the board. And Carter just happened to do really well on kind of his last couple picks down there. So you never say no. I think it's unlikely, but never impossible.
I think if you're into chess, Preston made a big move to take control of the middle of the board. Think about it not just as the draft board, but as a chess board. He made a huge move to control a big chunk of that board, but he sort of sacrificed his queen a little bit. He had, he gave up probably maybe just a tiny bit too much if we're looking back in hindsight. Hindsight's 2020. Maybe he would say that. Maybe he would disagree. I think it's easy for me to say that as the direct benefactor of that traded pick, right? But I think I agree that he got such control of the middle portion of that draft that he probably felt that he was in the driver's seat again. And I think, just like you're saying, Carter is already dealing from such a spot of advantage where, he has the first pick in every round as the, reigning champion. And not to mention the fact that statistically, he himself has been one of the best players. To have the opportunity to then pick have hit the very first pick and pick, whichever player he sees as the best, to turn around and then give him another pick very high in the draft is giving him, such an advantage. And maybe the trade-off is going to have to match that for anybody that wants to make a trade in future years, whether it's with yourself, Chase, or whether it ends up being with Carter again. That, with only 10 players available to draft, every one of those positions is extremely, extremely valuable. So what you're getting to about the draft is, I think 100% spot on. So what do you think? We've talked about trades. We've talked about a little bit of the strategy. How do you view kind of the players, whichever players you end up with? What's sort of your, I don't know, philosophy on how to pair each of these players together? Do you have a sort of a way to look at it, or is it just two player specific, two player dependent for you to sort of plan that out ahead of time before you know who you've got?
I mean, I think you have to have ideas for at least like the minds round, just based on what guys have done before. I think beyond that, one of the things Carter's done really well so far is kind of like seeing where guys are ahead of every round and being able to like shuffle, and your top guy might not be your top guy for one of the later 3 rounds, and you might need to kind of shuffle him back a pairing or two to give him the best chance. So I think you have your ideas for the first round. I've seen everyone play 3 times now at least, a lot of them more than that. So you kind of know what you're going to get, but at the same time, it's a lot. It could depend on the day, the weather, how the course is setting up. Certain guys are going to do better in certain conditions and stuff like that. So I think it's more of a wait and see game.
Or how the drinks went down the night before.
True. Perhaps the largest factor.
Yeah. Some often overlooked, but it's still extremely, extremely important.
Especially that.
Sure.
Some people say you play better guilty.
True.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially Chase just mentioned it. When you're talking about a 7 a.m. departure time for round 2 next year, that Founders, I think, getting a spot at the end of the table at Founders so you can keep everybody in front of you is, it'll be a coveted place to sit.
See who's having all days versus who's having the 13.5%.
Masagami.
Yeah.
Chase, I'm curious, does your team have a policy, if you will, when it comes to Birdie Juice?
No. I think do what works for you.
All right.
We're here for a good time.
Give them enough rope to hang themselves.
Yeah.
See what they do with it. Let them go, and if they then that's on them.
Yeah, I mean, while we're in, this is a total preview. We're not don't want to just interrogate Chase here, Cart. Let's hear. Do you yourself have some opinions on who to go after in what order? Have you given much thought to how you're going to pick guys, based on who you can pair them with, or based on who maybe has the best statistics, the best course fit? Keeping in mind, Chase, as well, that there's still potential for that first round to move from the Mines to Thornapple Point. I don't think it's been there's nothing been confirmed. It's the only round that we don't have tee times for. We talked about in the group chat a little bit, but as far as when you're considering course fit, just remember that we don't have confirmed tee times quite yet. But Carter, to my initial part of my question, do you have an idea for the strategy of how you're going to draft?
Yeah, I've kind of like took some time and looked at the players and the stats and kind of have a few different like lists going, I would say. Without saying obviously like too much, just kind of a kind of like rough kind of idea of where I think some people might go and where and who I'd want in different situations and how things kind of line up of what I think different players' abilities and roles can be, right? Like the reality is you can't necessarily win a championship with 5 superstars on the court as much as you'd like to think that you can, but like with that many guys trying to share the ball, it's not exactly gonna always go good. You need some role guys and some kind of like supporting cast members and just kind of looking at players and what roles I think that they can play and if who can kind of be dynamic in their own ways, I guess. Just kind of like, I think come draft night is when I'm kind of gonna have to make some decisions. Like I said before, like I want everybody on my team. But there's a few guys that I want, and I mean, you never know. And just to touch on the trades too, like I don't think we're gonna have a big blockbuster trade like we did last year. But I mean, you never know, like maybe like make it like a late round something or something to kind of build a team up or try to steal someone late that you really want. It'll be definitely interesting this year.
I gotta say, as a former member, and I guess you could still say current member until I'm not member of the conductors here, the PR training out of Carter is immaculate. He went on for a couple minutes there saying a whole lot of somethings with nothing of it, and then ended it with a headline of, well, there's not going to be any big trades, but maybe. And just left it with the headline. That was
I'm really not
immaculate.
open to trade. I'm really not open to trades, but I'd love to trade at some point. Like let me pose another question to both of you. Carter, you can start and then Chase follow up. But do you have any strategies for yourselves personally? We know that on draft night stuff will kind of move pretty fast, and things start ramping up. You got to make decisions quick on your feet. Do you have any strategies that you might employ, Carter, to help kind of slow down that rushed feeling and calm yourself to be able to make decisions quickly? Because as we know, that these things happen, you can try to slow them down and slow them down and slow them down, but there's 10 guys sitting out there waiting to hear their name called, and you got to make a decision.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I don't feel like last year maybe a little bit just because of the fireworks so early. Felt kind of like nervous or rushed or so. I don't foresee that happening now with 2 years of experience and also just having kind of a little more experience on I guess like you would call like a big stage. Just through like my hockey career, I don't think that's something where like I'm gonna feel like nervous, like everybody's watching me, like waiting to see who I'm gonna pick. Um, I think my biggest strategy is gonna be as soon as I pick somebody, then as far as I'm concerned, they're as equal in their decisions as well. So like if I go out and take Kyle first overall, as soon as I pick Kyle and Chase goes into the room to think about who he's gonna pick, like me and Kyle are gonna be talking like, okay, like who do we want next? And then when that person comes on, like then it's three guys, like, okay, who do we go after from here? Which is kind of how we've done it in the past. And obviously it's gone well. So if it ain't broke, don't
ain't
fix it.
broke.
Yes. So, sounds like you're going to harken back to some experience from outside of the trip. I'm not sure how I feel about you saying that you've been on a bigger stage before, but this is, probably the biggest stage any of us have ever been on. It's, that's a little bit interesting there. Maybe says a little bit about
Couple
how
thousand
serious
people, couple thousand
about
people
how
watching you
serious.
do your job isn't all that exciting.
Yeah, I don't know. Infinite is 7 billion people going to have access to this podcast. Depending on where there's internet connection now, moving through whatever Akon's done in Africa. But listen, he's going to harken back on some. Kyle can back me up. He's going to harken back to some experience from both inside of the draft, outside of the draft. He's going to rely on a handful of guys in the front office. Every player that gets drafted in is both playing the game and part of the front office staff. It sounds like, Chase, do you have a similar strategy for how you're going to slow this down? You haven't been, in front of the draftees, the eligible draft picks, yet before. Do you have some thoughts in mind on how you're going to handle that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the advantages I do have is I've seen Carter draft twice now, and also been in the room with him making those calls, so you kind of know what he looks for.
Yeah, an assistant GM experience nearly.
Yeah, so you see what he. I mean, you have to take your best guess at what he's going to do and have a idea of what you're going to do. So, and be prepared to deviate if he's going to go outside of his traditional profile. So,
Chase, I'm curious. Obviously, as we mentioned in a prior episode, Carter does have a special advisor this year in Brendan McLaren. And, as we all know, McLaren was sitting in that first pick the last couple of years. So he's been in a lot of those conversations. Do you feel like you're missing out at all not having a special advisor? And how do you plan to mitigate, maybe a lack of bodies within the organization early?
I mean, I think I'm lucky. I've been on the trip. This will be the third year now, so I've seen everyone play. I've also played a lot of golf with, core group of the guys, outside of just the couple years of the Kickstart. So, kind of know what you're going to see. So, not too worried about it. Like Carter said, I think you kind of got to lean on your first couple of picks there, and make sure that you're all sharing the same idea of what kind of team you're going to build when making those later picks. So
I think on top of that, do you feel that your experience with the courses allows you to focus a little bit more on the personnel than it does on who you have to play in at certain places?
yeah, I think it definitely is an advantage. If we do end up deviating outside of like the mines, I think aside from you, Colin, maybe, although he probably doesn't remember any of them.
Agreed.
I think last time we were at Thornapple, it took about 4 holes until Colin remembered playing there with us, like probably 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, that was a tough scene. We were
in college. So
we're 4 holes in. He's like, "Man, this hole looks kind of familiar." have you guys played here before? And I think Chase sort of looked at me and he's like, looks over at Cullen, and he and I almost at the same time were like, we've played here with you before.
Yeah.
Like a number of times, bro. Cully, I'm sorry, but this is some, you're never going to get past this. This is a tough scene for you until you're able to put some things together here. It's just unlucky, right?
Spin zone for Cully. Short-term memory. He's on to the next hole. He's moving forward.
Yeah.
He does view
flip
it
that
as
around, make it a positive. Flip that around. Chase, if we can go ahead, Cart.
I'll throw a quick little fun one here for you in the middle to kind of break it up. What is your view on the potential super dot pair of having Kyle and Connor in the same team in the same cart and just going just polka dotting?
I think I want to be like in the group in front to be able to watch it. This is going to be fantastic.
Absolutely.
It's just like, I think that's about as all in of a bet as you can do. It's either just going to be, Stephen Ames 9-8 situation, and it could be either way. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
9-8 situation.
I think
The opportunity you could get these two guys could be your Tiger. They could be Stephen Ames out there. We're not sure. There's a good chance it's going to break down that way, but we don't know which way it's going to go.
Put it on.
I think we know enough about most people that you kind of have a probability range, and that one kind of breaks the rules there. We might need some a little bit more advanced stats before we know.
The fans have been asking for it, just like when they put John Scott in the All-Star game.
I think it would be a fantastic,
what they want,
entertaining idea.
The organizations themselves might be so far against it, but they might not have no choice.
It would quickly go down as probably the most iconic Kickstart match of all time.
Round.
One way or the other.
Yeah, when we spin around to do, to ask everybody in 2025.
What's your favorite memory?
What your Kickstart memory is, I think you'd get about 11 out of 13 guys to say, watching Kyle and Connor come up number 17, one hole ahead of Justin and Tricky.
Imagine how much better it'd be watching you guys walk off like 11 at Diamond Springs, having already lost.
Having lost 8 and 7, and we just gotta
keep playing,
spend some time out there.
The four of them in that group make a pact that they're all gonna shoot the low net score and come in with like 55s, calling it good from the fairway. That's good. Oh, he made one for How does that go?
No, I think
play their second round in 2 hours 10 minutes.
Yeah, number 12 starts to go back towards the clubhouse. We may have to cut through the trees back and just pick up some beers and park our cart at 15 or something like that.
These guys are playing fast.
Yeah, these guys just
keep making pars.
It was only 20 minutes ago I saw them tee off on 10. How could they be done already? Yeah, we got our clocks cleaned, okay? So just don't even worry about it. We got some long drinks in the cart. We're going to go watch some golf.
It's the Waste Management Open that I never got.
Ouch.
We're put that conversation off to another episode. Take some notes because we'll get to that, Kyle. That's a,
So Chase, we'll move into the next one. Here is out of the last 2 years, obviously my team has kind of gotten the job done in different fashions. In your opinion, year after year, what has kind of made made the conductors successful, as you've seen from being on the receiving end and then also being within the team itself?
I think both years the big players have showed up. Between you and Justin for sure. And then you've also had the supporting cast every year that's shown up. So, we were talking about the big trade, and kind of after we talked about it, you're thinking about it, and like that sounds like something for Preston that should work most years. Just getting that big of a chunk of the quote unquote late top 8 guys should work most of the time. And I think you can make a good argument that like 60% of the time you make that trade, it probably works out. But you guys had Justin playing as well as he usually always will, and you had a great year.
Yeah, playing in the top end of my probability for sure. My variance probably isn't is probably one of the lowest of everyone, but playing at the playing at the top end of that was for sure ended up being an advantage. I want it to be known that Carter wrote this question for himself so that somebody else could brag on him more than he does for himself. So carry on.
How are you going to turn this tangent
What
around?
makes this successful? What makes the conductors successful? Please proceed.
Carter's unbelievably unwavering self-belief plays a large part, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean,
infectious.
I got more to give. I'm looking for a bounce back year myself. Anyways, moving into I guess the final stretch here before the draft and everything. Chase, what are kind of your, I guess, areas of where you're feeling confident, and then maybe your areas where in your strategy and maybe just in your overall confidence that you're kind of maybe not so sure about yet? The question is vague on purpose.
Yeah, confident. I think I have a good idea of what I want to do, and what pieces are going to work together. I think personally, also my game kind of came around in the last like 12 to 18 months in a positive way. So I'm looking forward to testing that out again. From the negatives, I think there's just a lot of, like we talked about, there's a lot of having to be ready to think on your feet and adjust the plan I have during the draft. And then also I should probably play golf at least once before the tournament, which has proven to be challenging in previous years. So it's a pretty fair overview.
It's called the Kickstart for a reason. It's when you start your golf.
That's been my philosophy.
Yeah, I just happen to have the Kickstart about 1/3 of the way through the summer this time. It's a bit of a tough scene. There's concerns in that same vein for a couple of players, and I don't know, how you guys feel about this, but I'd sort of like to, stir the pot a little bit. Can we get one of you? Let's start with Carter. Are there any players out there in the draft that you're sort of looking at that you have more concerns about than you have confidence in?
Yeah, there's some players out there that I've seen over the last, couple kickstarts and things where
name some names. Put your name on a take here. Let's get some names.
Some of the players themselves have I would say played above and beyond. One player that I would name who I'm unsure on is Michael Bomarito. Coming back, haven't seen him play in a while. He had a really good first year. I think about our round together, he meshed well with me in the cart, where I was kind of a little of the go guy, and he was just kind of the more kind of like pebble in a stream, kind of floating us down the river a little bit. So, but new knee, fiance, golf lessons, are they happening? Are they not happening? How much golf is he getting in? Where's his game at? How accurate is his handicap? I mean, these are things that we're I wouldn't say worried about, but less confident about.
It's a tough but fair take. I'll commend you for that. hate to give you any more credit than we give ourselves already on this podcast, and people are probably tired of hearing us,
Don't
talk
care.
about how good we are.
Our
Michael's
podcast.
tied for fourth best stroke average, while being negative strokes gained in 3 of those 4 rounds. So, sort of an impressive combination of statistics. It's quite interesting, actually, how he's somehow worked out to be so successful record-wise, shooting good scores but losing strokes to the field. It made me have to recheck my math quite a few times, actually. So your concerns are very valid, Carter. And if I can spin this around onto the captain of the Golden Harps, put your name on a take. Let's name some names. Is there other people that you have concerns about, or are you willing to sort of show your hand a little bit and tell us about somebody who you feel has extreme upside that maybe we often overlook on this podcast as hosts?
I think I'm gonna go with a extreme Tron Carter level take, where it's either gonna look amazing or I'm gonna be getting blown up about it after the tournament. But I'm gonna go with our host, Mr. Justin McPhail. I think the scores are probably always going to be in that range. He's not going to fall off, but you start getting up there to what, +3, +4 now.
Yeah,
You're losing your margin of error up there. So a couple guys have a good day. You never know what happens.
you're right. I think my record in
Plus,
year
he's looking
one
like a Bond
probably.
villain now with the cat up on his.
This is
I
a
had
full range podcast, by the way.
I'm sorry, I had an unexpected entry. My record in year one, to what you're sort of what you're getting at, my scores were pretty good still, other than my round at the mines, which I lost in. I'll just say, like, you can shoot the best scores. Carter's said it. He's had the experience at Diamond Springs last year. Shooting low scores doesn't necessarily win you matches. And then on top of that, it's important that you shoot under your handicap. And I've handcuffed myself in a way that is maybe difficult to recover from when you talk about a couple guys that are hovering around that 6 to 12 area. When you start having to give them a bonus 3 dots because you haven't maintained your handicap properly throughout the rest of the previous year, then you're in maybe a difficult situation. I think that I ran into that in year one and was able to manage my handicap throughout the remainder of 2022 and didn't do so very well in 2023. You can look me up on Gin if you want. I'm not going to say it on here, but yeah, you're onto something for sure. Where there's smoke, I hope that there is no fire.
I'll go ahead and just jump in
I mean,
front of
these
this
were
here.
these were the two biggest cop out answers for me and Chase.
100%. Chase has
world.
seen the mocks. He knows who's going the 1-1. I don't think there's any secret who's going the 1-1.
Jake Transit.
I like what Chase is doing here. I like trying to get into Justin's head as if he's already on the conductors. I like it.
Introducing doubt. I understand it. I also, maybe the way I look at it is Chase trying to cheapen the value of the number 1 overall pick so that he himself can trade into it. It's an interesting strategy as well.
Chase is playing chess out here. He ain't playing no checkers, and I like it.
Three-dimensional chess, and on the left side of my screen is I don't know how this is being recorded, but the left side of my screen in a Tigers hat is a checkers player if I ever seen one.
You got 2 rings on my coattails. And by my coattails, I mean my co-pilot seat. Anyways, I'll go on the record and say right now, I want the Super Dot team.
Fuck yeah.
Fetty and Kyle Steffi. I want
Someone's
it.
got to try it.
I want it to happen.
Someone's got to try it.
And if I gotta go out and get it, I'll go out and get it.
Pick
Yeah,
Fetty in the
you've
third.
definitely shown in the past that you're willing to go out and get those 2 guys, leaving them for the last 3 in last year's draft. For
I
sure,
traded
you're willing to go up to get somebody.
I traded the house to get the high net and the low net back to back in the first round last year and live to tell the tale.
Yeah, it was so brave of you to draft a guy that was 3-1. Yeah, so brave of you to draft a guy that had never lost a team match before. What bravery you shown.
Who?
You.
You and Brendan lost a team match in the first year.
Yeah, he
I
wasn't
did
the
it.
reason you lost, though. I ain't gonna lie to you.
He's the reason we won all our matches.
He had an inflated handicap.
All right. Chase, I'll give you the final word. The Golden Harps 2024. Any last words for this pod? Floor is yours.
I'm not doing this just for 1 year, so
You'll be
I
on the
love it.
conductors again. Don't
not
worry.
planning on doing this once.
I love it.
Chase ain't here for the 1 time. He's here for the 2 time, 3 time, 4 time, 5
Got-
time, 6
got-
time.
Plenty of room on that logo for some stars. So
Well done. Yes, a purposeful design. You love to see it.
That's sick.
I have one final question because we asked, I believe we asked Brendan, is who do you, if you had to guess or speculate or anything, who do you see as potentially being the captain in 2025? Do you see Cullen fresh back into eligibility come back? Do you see potentially a 2nd-year player from this year? Maybe Kyle Connor or somebody maybe like Transit moving into that captaincy, or do we go?
yeah, I think Kyle would be a great pick. He's really kind of stepped up and helped with the pod and all that stuff. Cody's been in it for a couple of years now and has been important on the teams he's been on.
Has a very successful record despite not having hoisted the trophy himself.
I think
yes.
a me versus Justin matchup would be pretty intriguing. Round out the executive board being in the captaincy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Me and Justin in 2025 would be an absolute showdown. All those times he threw me in the drywall at our house in Fenton.
Like he was diving out there. He knew how to get support from the refs. Kyle, let me as the host of our podcast, can I ask you the same question? Who do you see as maybe getting the captaincy in 2025 as we round out this conversation, and who would you like to see most from an entertainment standpoint? Maybe
Entertainment. With all respect due to Chase, not to write him off in the slightest, the Carter-Justin matchup would be a fucking riot.
sorry for cussing.
Sorry for cussing.
Big time players, big time plays.
It would be
Tuesday. Filming this on a Tuesday.
That would be electric. I didn't get to see Cullen in the captaincy. I think that'd be fun. I think Tricky's a natural fit as well. Just, really good player. I don't think anyone's going to be scared with him leading the front there. I don't think there's a bad pick, really.
Yeah.
And that's a really politically bullshit answer, but good group of guys. I don't see anybody doing a poor job at captaincy. I think everybody would take it seriously and do well with it, really.
Yeah. We've forced a couple guys to put their names on things. We'll let you slide by without making a bold statement or anything like that. We're not going to hold you to anything. We love you. You're our host here. Thanks Chase for your participation. Thanks for giving us just enough that we can, maybe get some eyeballs on you. And then, thanks Carter for coming in and doing the same and, putting on a show for everybody. I appreciate all of you guys coming on. Kyle, thanks for hosting us. Thank you to Dunham's, of course, and Dan Henderson and Alliance Beverage. Thanks for being part of this podcast. Thanks a ton to everyone.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Check out the next video. The boys playing some Fortnite.
Ooh, yeah.
See you guys.
Hey, and before we